Welcome to Audiobooks. Immerse yourself in the world of stories, ideas, and knowledge, all through the power of audio.
Book title: The Art of Strategic Thinking. Chapter 1: The Essence of Strategy. What strategic thinking really means versus tactical or operational thinking. Why it matters in leadership, business, and personal life. The difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. When people hear the word strategy, they often think of military generals drawing battle plans, CEOs unveiling bold corporate visions, or political leaders maneuvering on the global stage. But strategy is not limited to the boardroom or the battlefield. At its core, strategy is a way of thinking, a mindset that guides choices, clarifies priorities, and directs action toward a meaningful outcome. Strategic thinking is the art of stepping back from the noise of the moment and asking, what game am I really playing, and how do I win it? To understand the essence of strategy, we first need to separate it from tactics. Tactics are the actions we take in the short term, the moves we make on the chessboard. Strategy, by contrast, is the vision that gives those moves purpose. Imagine two athletes training for a marathon. One focuses only on today's workout, running as hard as possible without regard for tomorrow. The other paces herself, knowing that her ultimate goal is not today's sprint, but the finish line weeks away. Both are working hard, but only one is thinking strategically. Strategy is about the destination. Tactics are the steps on the road. Strategic thinking also differs from operational efficiency. Many people confuse working harder, faster, or more skillfully with being strategic. But efficiency without direction is like rowing a boat with all your might while facing the wrong shore. You may arrive quickly, but it won't be where you intended to go. True strategy asks not just how do I move, but where should I be moving? One hallmark of strategic thinking is clarity of purpose. You cannot design a winning strategy without knowing what winning means. For some, winning might mean building the most profitable company. For others, it might mean creating social impact, living a balanced life, or simply achieving inner peace. A clear end goal becomes a compass that shapes every decision along the way. Without it, even brilliant ideas can scatter like arrows shot without a target. Another hallmark is prioritization. Strategy is about choices, and choices require sacrifice. The best strategic minds understand that saying yes to one path often means saying no to others. Apple, for instance, built its dominance not by making every product imaginable, but by focusing relentlessly on a handful of designs executed with excellence. This ability to narrow focus, to resist distraction, is one of the most powerful aspects of strategy. But perhaps the most overlooked element of strategic thinking is perspective. Tactical thinkers are absorbed in the immediate battle. Strategic thinkers rise above it, scanning the horizon, seeing connections others miss. They ask, what patterns are emerging? What assumptions am I making? What will matter most 5 years from now? This shift in perspective transforms ordinary decision-making into strategy. History offers countless examples. Consider Winston Churchill during World War II. While many leaders focused narrowly on battles at hand, Churchill thought in terms of the larger war effort, building alliances, sustaining morale, and envisioning what victory would require long after the fighting ended. His strategy wasn't perfect, but it was big enough to shape the outcome of history. Contrast this with leaders who obsessed over tactical victories but lost sight of the greater picture. Their armies marched bravely, but their vision faltered. The same lesson applies to personal life. Strategic thinking might mean choosing not to chase every opportunity, but to invest deeply in the ones aligned with your values. It might mean resisting the urge for immediate gratification in favor of long-term growth. It might even mean walking away from a battle you could win, because winning it would distract you from the war that truly matters. The essence of strategy, then, is not clever maneuvers or secret formulas. It is perspective, clarity, and purpose. It is the discipline of aligning today's choices with tomorrow's goals. When you adopt this mindset, you begin to see the world differently. Every decision becomes not just a reaction, but a move in a larger game, a game that you are consciously, deliberately, and wisely choosing to play.
Chapter 2. Seeing the Bigger Picture. Imagine standing in the middle of a dense forest. All you can see are the trees around you, thick trunks, tangled branches, shadows blocking the light. From that vantage point, the path ahead looks uncertain, maybe even impossible. Now picture yourself climbing a hill that overlooks the same forest. Suddenly, the patterns reveal themselves. The winding river, the open meadow, the trail that cuts through the trees. What seemed confusing and overwhelming at ground level becomes clear from above. That shift in perspective is the essence of seeing the bigger picture, and it is at the heart of strategic thinking. Many people get stuck in the immediacy of their challenges. They worry about the next meeting, the next sale, the next deadline. These are important, but if they consume all of your energy, you risk becoming reactive instead of proactive. Strategic thinkers train themselves to zoom out. They ask, what is really happening here? How does this piece fit into the larger puzzle? What story is unfolding beyond the details in front of me? Seeing the bigger picture requires context. No decision exists in isolation. Every move interacts with systems, trends, and environments larger than itself. Think about a business launching a new product. The tactical questions might be, how do we design the packaging? What price should we set? How do we advertise? These matter, but the strategic questions go deeper. Where is the market heading? What problems are customers struggling with that they cannot yet articulate? How will this product fit into a broader ecosystem of offerings 5 years from now? Those who think strategically see connections others overlook. Consider Henry Ford. At the dawn of the automobile age, most manufacturers were focused on building faster, more luxurious cars for the wealthy. Ford zoomed out. He saw that the real opportunity lay not in serving the rich, but in transforming society by making cars affordable for ordinary people. His focus on mass production, efficiency, and accessibility not only revolutionized transportation, but reshaped modern industry. Tacticians were building cars. Ford was building a new world. The bigger picture also involves recognizing patterns across time. Strategic thinkers are students of history, not because they want to repeat the past, but because they know human behavior, competition, and innovation follow rhythms. Empires rise and fall, markets expand and contract, technologies disrupt and evolve. By understanding these cycles, strategic minds can anticipate what comes next. They may not predict exact events, but they prepare themselves for likely shifts. There's also a personal dimension to this principle. In daily life, it's easy to get caught up in small setbacks, a missed opportunity, a difficult conversation, an unexpected obstacle. But if you step back, you often see that these moments are just part of a larger journey. That job you didn't get may free you to pursue the one that changes your career. That failure may teach you the lesson that unlocks future success. Strategic thinkers are not immune to frustration, but they interpret events within the broader arc of growth. Of course, seeing the bigger picture is not about ignoring details. The details still matter, but details without context can mislead, while context without details can paralyze. The true art lies in moving fluidly between the two, zooming in when execution demands it, then zooming out to ensure each action aligns with the larger design. To cultivate this habit, practice asking yourself 3 questions. First, what is the immediate issue? Second, what larger forces are shaping this issue? And third, how does my decision today fit into the story I want to create tomorrow? These questions act like the hilltop view of the forest, reminding you that every tree, every step, and every choice exists within a wider landscape. When you learn to see the bigger picture, you stop chasing quick fixes and start designing lasting impact. You recognize that every moment is connected to something larger, and that your task as a strategic thinker is not merely to move forward, but to move forward wisely, guided by a vision that stretches beyond the horizon.
Chapter 3: The Power of Perspective. Understanding multiple viewpoints to shape better decisions. Avoiding tunnel vision and confirmation bias. Tools for reframing problems to uncover hidden solutions. If strategy begins with seeing the bigger picture, it comes alive through perspective. Perspective is the lens through which we interpret reality. Two people can look at the same situation and see completely different things. One perceives an obstacle, the other an opportunity. One sees a dead end, the other sees a doorway. The facts remain the same, but the frame changes everything. Strategic thinkers know that perspective is power. They don't lock themselves into a single way of seeing. They deliberately shift lenses, testing different angles until the situation reveals its hidden possibilities. Like photographers adjusting a camera, they know that a small shift in focus can bring new clarity. Think of the story of the 3 bricklayers. When asked what they were doing, the first said, "I'm laying bricks." The second replied, "I'm building a wall." But the third smiled and said, "I'm building a cathedral." Same task, same bricks, completely different perspective. The third bricklayer wasn't just working, he was contributing to a vision larger than himself. That perspective gave meaning to his labor, resilience to his struggles, and pride in his craft. In strategy, perspective separates the reactive from the visionary. A reactive leader focuses only on immediate challenges: how to cut costs this quarter, how to fix today's crisis. A visionary leader reframes the same challenges within a larger story. What does this mean for our future? How can we turn today's problem into tomorrow's advantage? It is not that one ignores reality, rather they interpret it through a lens that creates possibilities instead of limits. Perspective also protects against one of the greatest threats to strategic thinking: tunnel vision. When we become too absorbed in our own viewpoint, we blind ourselves to alternatives. History is filled with cautionary tales of leaders who fell victim to this. Consider Kodak, once the giant of photography. Their tunnel vision kept them focused on film even as digital technology emerged. They weren't incapable, they were trapped in a perspective that no longer fit the world. By the time they realized it, the opportunity had slipped away. Strategic thinkers avoid this trap by deliberately seeking out diverse perspectives. They ask questions like, how would my competitor view this situation? What would my customer see that I cannot? What if I looked at this problem as if I were an outsider with no attachment to the past? By shifting perspectives, they expand the range of possible solutions. In personal life, perspective can be just as transformative. Imagine losing a job. From one perspective, it feels like rejection, failure, loss of security. From another, it becomes a chance to reinvent, to pursue a passion long postponed, to escape a rut. Neither perspective denies the reality of the loss, but one drains energy while the other creates momentum. The event is the same, the meaning is different. Strategic thinkers know they cannot always control events, but they can always choose perspective. Perspective also sharpens decision-making. Instead of asking only, what's the best choice right now, they ask, what choice will matter most 5 years from now? Instead of obsessing over what they might lose, they consider what they stand to gain. Instead of asking, what if this fails, they also ask, what if this succeeds? The shift in framing transforms hesitation into courage. To practice the art of perspective, try this exercise. When faced with a challenge, write down 3 different ways of interpreting it. One is a setback, one is an opportunity, and one as a part of a larger narrative.
This simple act forces your mind to break free from a single frame and opens up new directions for strategy. In the end, perspective is the bridge between vision and action. It is how you translate the bigger picture into meaning and meaning into momentum. Mastering perspective doesn't just change how you see the world, it changes how you shape it.
Chapter 4. Anticipation. Thinking several moves ahead. Borrowing lessons from chess, war, and negotiations. Scenario planning and forecasting. How to anticipate competitors, challenges, and opportunities. If perspective allows us to see differently, anticipation allows us to think ahead. Strategy is not only about understanding the present, it's about preparing for the future. The best strategic minds treat life like a game of chess. They don't just consider the move in front of them, they imagine the chain reaction that will follow. Each decision, each step, is measured not only by its immediate effect, but by the ripple it creates in the larger game. In chess, amateurs focus on the next move. Masters think 3, 5, even 10 moves ahead. They ask, if I move here, what will my opponent do? What opportunities will this open or close for me later? Strategic thinkers in business, politics, or personal life do the same. They anticipate not only outcomes, but countermoves, not only successes, but setbacks. This habit of looking forward transforms them from players reacting to the game into players shaping the game. History is full of examples. Take Amazon in the early days. Jeff Bezos didn't just want to sell books online. He anticipated how the internet would transform commerce. By starting with books, a manageable category with broad appeal, he laid the foundation for a platform that could later sell anything. Each move was a step toward a much bigger vision. Competitors saw a bookstore, Bezos saw the future of shopping. His ability to anticipate trends allowed Amazon to expand systematically, not recklessly. Anticipation also requires imagining multiple scenarios, not just one. Life rarely unfolds exactly as planned. A strong strategy includes branches, plans for best case, worst case, and everything in between. Military strategists call this scenario planning, and it applies far beyond the battlefield. A company anticipating a supply shortage, for example, might prepare alternate suppliers, digital solutions, or ways to redesign the product altogether. They don't wait for crisis to hit before scrambling. They rehearse possible futures in advance. In personal life, anticipation means asking yourself, if I make this decision today, where will it lead me in 5 years? What secondary effects could arise? What risks am I overlooking? A student choosing a major, a professional considering a career change, a parent planning for their children, each is engaging in a form of anticipation. The choices may feel immediate, but their consequences will echo for years. Strategic thinkers discipline themselves to trace those echoes forward before acting. Yet, anticipation is not about predicting the future with perfect accuracy. No one can do that. It is about preparing for it. The world is unpredictable, but patterns emerge. Economies move in cycles. Technologies mature in stages. Human behavior repeats familiar rhythms. By studying these patterns, strategic thinkers can place educated bets on what is most likely while staying flexible if the unexpected occurs. Of course, there is a danger in overthinking. Too much anticipation can lead to paralysis, waiting endlessly for more information, more certainty, more clarity. The key is balance. Think far enough ahead to see consequences, but not so far that you stop moving. Like a sailor navigating by the stars, you keep the destination in mind while adjusting constantly to the winds and currents. To strengthen your ability to anticipate, practice this exercise. Before making a decision, list 3 likely outcomes: positive, negative, and neutral. Then imagine how you would respond to each. This mental rehearsal prepares you for flexibility and reduces the shock of surprise. Over time, you'll find that fewer events catch you off guard because you've already played them out in your mind. Anticipation is what transforms strategy from reaction into design. It's how you shift from being a piece on the board to becoming the player who guides the game. When you think several moves ahead, you are no longer at the mercy of chance. You are shaping the path that leads to your chosen future.
Chapter 5. Decision-making under uncertainty. Balancing logic, intuition, and data. Cognitive biases that sabotage strategic decisions. Frameworks like cost-benefit,
risk-reward, and probabilistic thinking. Every strategy eventually collides with uncertainty. No matter how carefully we plan, the world refuses to give us perfect information. Competitors act unpredictably. Markets shift suddenly. People change their minds, and events unfold in ways no one could foresee. The true test of a strategic thinker is not how they act when everything is clear, but how they decide when the path ahead is foggy. Uncertainty can feel paralyzing. Many people delay decisions, waiting for more data, more reassurance, more guarantees. But in reality, waiting often carries its own risk. Opportunities vanish, windows close, and indecision itself becomes a decision, usually the worst one. Strategic thinkers accept that uncertainty is not the exception, but the rule. Instead of fearing it, they learn to navigate it. The first principle of decision-making under uncertainty is probability, not certainty. You cannot know for sure how things will unfold, but you can estimate the likelihood of different outcomes. Investors, for example, never know exactly how the market will move, but they weigh risks and returns, diversify their bets, and act on probabilities rather than guarantees. Strategic minds ask, what is most likely to happen? What is possible, even if less likely? How can I prepare for both? The second principle is bias awareness. Our brains are wired with shortcuts that help us make quick judgments, but these shortcuts often mislead us in uncertain situations. Confirmation bias pushes us to favor information that supports what we already believe. Loss aversion makes us fear losing more than we value winning. Overconfidence convinces us that our predictions are better than they actually are. Strategic thinkers discipline themselves to question these instincts, asking, am I seeing this clearly, or am I letting fear, ego, or habit distort my judgment? The third principle is balancing logic with intuition. Data is invaluable, but data rarely paints the full picture. Sometimes numbers point in one direction, while experience, instinct, or wisdom suggest another. Great decision makers don't ignore either side, they integrate them. They use analysis to check intuition and intuition to challenge analysis. This balance allows them to act decisively without being reckless. Consider the story of Howard Schultz, the former CEO of Starbucks. In the early days, expanding coffee shops across the U.S. was far from certain. Most Americans were used to cheap, fast coffee, not espresso drinks in a European-style cafe. The data at the time didn't guarantee success, but Schultz combined the logic of market research with his intuition about culture shifting toward experience and community. His decision, made under uncertainty, transformed Starbucks into a global brand. The fourth principle is adaptability. Decisions under uncertainty should not be set in stone. Instead, they should be made with feedback loops, ways of testing assumptions, measuring progress, and adjusting quickly. Think of it like sailing. You cannot control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. Strategic decision makers don't cling to their first choice out of pride, they adapt as reality unfolds. Finally, there is the principle of courage. Strategic decisions often mean stepping into the unknown. You will rarely have all the information you want. You will rarely feel fully ready. But waiting for certainty means waiting forever. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the willingness to act despite it, guided by the best judgment you can make with what you know now. To practice decision-making under uncertainty, try this exercise. Before choosing, write down the information you have, the information you wish you had, and the assumptions you're making. Then decide as if you will later have to defend your choice publicly. This discipline forces clarity, reduces bias, and strengthens confidence. Uncertainty will never disappear. But when you learn to think in probabilities, guard against bias, balance intuition with analysis, adapt as you go, and act with courage, you transform uncertainty into an arena where strategy truly proves its worth.
Chapter 6. The Role of Creativity in Strategy. Strategy as both an art and a science. Lateral thinking and outside-the-box approaches. Case studies of breakthroughs born from unconventional ideas. When people hear the word strategy, they often picture logic, analysis, spreadsheets, and battle plans. Strategy feels like something grounded in discipline and structure. And it is. But strategy is not only a science,
it is also an art. At the heart of every great strategy lies creativity, the ability to see what others cannot, to imagine possibilities that don't yet exist, and to connect ideas in unexpected ways. Without creativity, strategy becomes mechanical. You analyze the data, follow the rules, and replicate what others have already done. That might keep you afloat, but it rarely sets you apart. Creativity is what allows you to break patterns, challenge assumptions, and discover paths no one else is walking. In fact, some of the greatest strategic breakthroughs in history came not from more resources or better information, but from someone daring to think differently. Consider the story of Southwest Airlines. In the 1970s, most airlines competed by offering luxury, meals, lounges, elaborate service. Southwest took a radically different approach. Instead of copying the industry, they reimagined air travel as closer to bus travel. Fast, affordable, no frills. That creative leap not only carved out a new market, but disrupted the entire industry. Competitors saw only one way to play the game. Southwest changed the rules of the game altogether. Creativity and strategy often comes from asking unconventional questions. Instead of asking, how can we do this better? Creative thinkers ask, why are we doing this at all? What if we did the opposite? What if we combined two unrelated ideas? These what-if questions open doors to fresh insights. Netflix asked, what if people didn't have to go to a store to rent movies? Later they asked, what if movies didn't even have to be physical discs? Each question unlocked a new creative leap that reshaped entertainment. But creativity isn't limited to organizations. On a personal level, it might mean reimagining your career path, combining skills in unusual ways, or approaching problems with fresh eyes. For example, someone stuck in a job they dislike might ask, what if I merged my professional expertise with my hobby? Could I create a niche no one else is filling? This type of thinking often leads to opportunities hiding in plain sight. Of course, creativity in strategy faces resistance. New ideas feel risky. They challenge comfort zones and established habits. Many organizations kill creativity not by lack of imagination, but by fear of failure. Strategic thinkers understand that creativity requires experimentation, and experimentation carries the possibility of missteps. They don't see failure as the opposite of strategy, but as part of the creative process that refines it. One way to cultivate creativity in strategy is to deliberately expose yourself to different fields and perspectives. Many breakthroughs happen at the intersection of disciplines. Steve Jobs famously blended technology with design and the humanities, producing products that were not only functional but beautiful. By stepping outside their own silos, strategic thinkers discover metaphors, models, and methods they can adapt to their own challenges. Another way is to embrace constraints. Paradoxically, limits often spark creativity. When resources are scarce, you're forced to think differently. When time is short, you focus on essentials. The Apollo 13 mission, where NASA engineers had to invent a life-saving solution with limited materials on hand, stands as a testament to how creativity under constraint can drive extraordinary outcomes. To practice creative strategy, try this exercise. The next time you face a challenge, brainstorm not just solutions, but opposites. If the norm is to expand, what if you shrank? If the trend is to add features, what if you simplified? If everyone is competing head-to-head, what if you redefined the battlefield? Often the spark of strategy lies not in doing what everyone else is doing, but in daring to ask what no one else has asked. Creativity is not decoration in strategy, it is its beating heart. Data and logic can tell you what is, but creativity reveals what could be. And it is in that leap, from the known to the possible, that true strategy is born.
Chapter 7. Aligning Goals and Resources. Prioritization and resource allocation as the heart of strategy. Matching strengths to opportunities. How to avoid spreading efforts too thin. Every strategy, no matter how brilliant, must eventually face reality. You can only act with the resources you have. Vision without resources is a dream. Resources without vision are wasted. The true art of strategic thinking lies in alignment, bringing goals and resources into harmony so that each supports the other. Think of strategy like building a bridge. The goal is to cross to the other side, but you cannot design the bridge in isolation from the materials available. If you have steel, you build one kind of structure. If you have wood, you design another. The bridge may look different, but the key is that both design and materials are aligned. Without that alignment, the bridge collapses before it ever serves its purpose. In organizations, misalignment is common. Leaders set ambitious goals without considering whether the team, time, or budget can realistically support them. Or they accumulate resources, technology, staff, capital, without clarifying how these should advance the mission. The result is wasted energy, frustrated teams, and strategies that fail not because the ideas were bad, but because the execution was impossible. Strategic thinkers avoid this trap by constantly asking two questions: what do we want to achieve, and what do we have to achieve it? Consider the story of IKEA. Its goal has always been to make stylish furniture affordable for the masses. That goal shaped every decision about resources. Instead of using expensive materials, they relied on flat-pack designs and customer self-assembly. Instead of investing in luxury showrooms, they built warehouse-style stores where shoppers could see and collect products themselves. By aligning resources with their goal, IKEA created a consistent strategy that customers instantly recognized and trusted. Alignment also demands prioritization. Resources are always limited: time, money, attention, energy. Trying to do everything at once dilutes effort. Strategic thinkers narrow their focus, directing resources toward the few goals that matter most. Apple famously killed dozens of product lines when Steve Jobs returned in the late 1990s, focusing instead on just a handful of devices. That ruthless alignment between goals and resources set the stage for Apple's resurgence. On a personal level, alignment matters just as much. Imagine someone whose goal is to live a healthy, balanced life, but who allocates all their resources, time, energy, money, toward work. The misalignment eventually catches up in burnout or poor health. Another person may dream of writing a book, but never creates time in their schedule to sit down and write. In both cases, the failure isn't in the goal itself, but in the lack of resource alignment. Of course, alignment is not static. Goals evolve as circumstances change, and resources fluctuate over time. Strategic thinkers revisit alignment regularly, adjusting either the goal or the resource plan when they drift apart. Sometimes that means scaling back ambition until resources catch up. Other times it means investing in new resources to make bigger goals possible. The key is honesty, facing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. To practice alignment, try this exercise. List your top 3 goals, then write down the resources, time, money, skills, relationships you are currently dedicating to each. Often, you'll discover gaps, big goals with little support, or resources flowing to things that aren't truly goals. Alignment begins with awareness. When goals and resources reinforce each other, strategy becomes not just vision, but momentum. Effort stops scattering in every direction and starts converging toward results. That convergence, that harmony, is where strategy shifts from theory to reality, and where progress accelerates toward the future you've chosen.
Chapter 8: Building Strategic Resilience. Adaptability as a competitive edge. Strategies for pivoting when plans fail. No matter how carefully crafted, no strategy survives unchanged. The world moves too quickly, variables shift too suddenly, and surprises appear without warning. What separates strong strategies from fragile ones is resilience, the ability to absorb shocks, adapt, and continue moving toward long-term goals even when plans fall apart. Resilience is not about avoiding challenges. It is about preparing for them. Strategic thinkers know that disruption is inevitable. Markets will collapse, technology will change, competitors will counter, and life will throw the unexpected at you. Instead of clinging rigidly to one plan, they design strategies that can bend without breaking. Resilient strategies protect against failure while keeping options open for renewal and growth. One way to build resilience is through diversification. Farmers know not to plant only one crop, because a single pest or storm could wipe out their entire livelihood. Investors apply the same principle by spreading their assets across industries and regions. In strategy, diversification doesn't mean scattering effort aimlessly, but ensuring you are not so dependent on one factor that its collapse destroys everything. A business overly reliant on one client, one supplier, or one technology is fragile. A resilient one builds alternatives. Another way is through redundancy. Airplanes have multiple engines and backup systems, not because engineers expect constant failure, but because lives depend on resilience when failure does occur. In organizations, redundancy might mean cross-training employees, building financial reserves, or maintaining backup supply chains. In personal life, it could mean developing multiple skills or building a supportive network so that you are not vulnerable to one setback. But resilience is not only structural, it is also psychological. The mindset of resilience is adaptability, the willingness to pivot, to reframe setbacks as lessons, to find new routes when the old ones close. Consider Netflix. They began as a DVD rental service by mail. When streaming technology emerged, they didn't cling to their original model out of pride. They pivoted, embracing digital distribution before competitors. Later, when streaming competition intensified, they pivoted again by investing in original content. Each shift required courage and humility, but resilience allowed them not only to survive, but to thrive. In personal life, resilience often shows up in how we respond to failure. Some people treat setbacks as final verdicts. Others see them as feedback. Thomas Edison famously said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." That mindset turned repeated setbacks into stepping stones towards the invention of the light bulb. Strategic resilience isn't about never falling. It's about always getting back up. Building resilience also requires balancing consistency with flexibility. You hold fast to your core values and long-term vision, but you remain flexible in methods and tactics. Think of a tree. Its roots anchor it deeply, but its branches bend with the wind. A rigid tree snaps in a storm. A resilient one sways and survives. Strategic thinkers design their strategies like that tree, rooted yet flexible, principled yet adaptable. To cultivate resilience, practice asking, if my plan fails, what will I do next? If circumstances change, how will I adjust? What core values must remain unshaken, and what details can I change freely? These questions keep you from being blindsided and help you respond with agility instead of panic. In the end, resilience is what makes strategy sustainable. Anyone can succeed when conditions are perfect, but the real test of a strategic thinker is how they navigate storms. When setbacks come, and they always do, resilience keeps you standing, adapting, and moving forward. It is not the absence of hardship that defines a strong strategy, but the ability to endure and even grow stronger because of it.
Chapter 9: Influence and Power Dynamics. How strategic thinkers shape environments, not just adopt to them. Building alliances and leveraging networks. The hidden politics of decision-making. At its core, strategy is not just about ideas. It is about people. You can design the most brilliant plan, but without the ability to influence others and navigate power dynamics, it will remain only a plan. Strategic thinkers understand that influence,
The art of shaping decisions, perceptions, and actions is central to making strategy work. Power often gets a negative reputation, but in reality, it is neutral. Power is simply the ability to get things done, to direct resources, and to shape outcomes. Influence is how that power is exercised. A wise strategist does not rely on authority alone. Instead, they build trust, credibility, and alliances that make others willingly support their vision. One dimension of influence is credibility. People follow those they believe know what they are doing. Credibility comes from expertise, consistency, and integrity. When your actions align with your words, others see you as reliable. Over time, credibility compounds like interest in a bank account. A single betrayal, however, can wipe it out instantly. That is why strategic thinkers guard their credibility carefully. Another dimension is relationships. Influence grows strongest not from issuing commands, but from cultivating connections. Great leaders, negotiators, and strategists invest time in understanding what others value. They listen more than they speak. They recognize that people support strategies not because they're forced to, but because they see their own interests reflected within them. By aligning personal goals with collective vision, influence becomes effortless. Strategic thinkers also understand power dynamics. Power does not always sit at the top of the organizational chart. Sometimes the most influential person in a room is not the one with the title, but the one with the trust of the group. In politics, business, and even families, hidden networks of influence often determine outcomes. To navigate these dynamics, you must observe keenly. Who holds informal authority? Who are the connectors, the gatekeepers, the quiet influencers? Winning them over may matter more than winning over the figurehead. Consider history. In ancient China, military strategist Sun Tzu wrote that the supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. He understood that influence can achieve victories where force fails. In modern business, Steve Jobs famously combined vision with persuasion, convincing not only his employees, but also customers to believe in Apple's products as more than devices, as symbols of creativity and identity. His influence built a devoted following that no competitor could easily match. Yet influence without ethics becomes manipulation. Strategic thinkers distinguish between manipulation, which deceives for selfish gain, and influence, which aligns truthfully with shared benefit. Manipulation may yield short-term wins, but it erodes trust. Influence rooted in honesty builds lasting power. Power dynamics also shift constantly. A strategy that relies on one person's support today may falter tomorrow if alliances change. That is why resilient strategists map the landscape continuously. They ask, who are the stakeholders? What do they want? How are their positions changing? By anticipating shifts in power, they avoid being blindsided and can adjust their approach in time. Finally, influence requires communication. The best ideas fail if they are poorly explained. Strategic communicators tailor their message to their audience, clear, concise for some, detailed and logical for others. They use stories to capture hearts and data to satisfy minds. Influence is never one size fits all. It adapts to context. The essence of strategic influence is this: people rarely follow plans, they follow people. When you build credibility, cultivate trust, respect power dynamics, and communicate effectively, your strategies gain the fuel they need to move from concept to reality. Without influence, even the sharpest strategies stall. With it, you can move mountains.
Chapter 10. Timing, the invisible lever. Why acting too early or too late can kill a strategy. Recognizing strategic windows of opportunity. Lessons from history and business on perfect timing. In strategy, timing is often the invisible lever that separates success from failure. You may have the clearest vision, the strongest resources, and the best plan, but if you act too early or too late, your efforts can falter. Strategic thinkers understand that when you act can be just as important as how you act. Timing begins with patience. Acting prematurely often wastes energy and exposes you to unnecessary risk. Consider the classic example of Apple's Newton, an early personal digital assistant. The technology was impressive, but the market wasn't ready. The product failed not because it lacked vision, but because the timing was off. Conversely, acting too late can mean missed opportunities. Kodak hesitated to fully embrace digital photography, and by the time they adapted, competitors had already captured the market. The lesson is clear. Timing amplifies strategy, while poor timing undermines it. Strategic timing requires observation. You must be attuned to signals, trends, and patterns. In business, this might mean noticing shifts in consumer behavior, technological advancements, or competitor moves. In personal life, it could involve recognizing opportunities for career advancement, investment, or learning. Timing is rarely about intuition alone. It is about sensing the pulse of the environment and positioning yourself in the right place at the right moment. Another aspect of timing is preparation. You cannot act at the perfect moment if you are not ready. A musician waits for the right beat, an athlete times their sprint, a general prepares before moving troops. Strategic thinkers invest in preparations so that when the moment arrives, they can execute flawlessly. Preparation and timing are inseparable. One without the other is wasted effort. Timing also involves calculated risk. Waiting for perfection can be paralyzing. There is almost never a moment when all variables are ideal. Strategic thinkers learn to balance readiness with opportunity. They recognize that some degree of uncertainty is inevitable, and that decisive action, even under imperfect conditions, often outperforms hesitation. Warren Buffett famously invests when others panic, not when everyone feels safe. He understands that the right moment often involves some discomfort. History is full of examples of timing as a decisive factor. During World War II, the Allies carefully timed the D-Day invasion after months of deception, preparation, and analysis. Even a day too early or too late could have changed the outcome. Similarly, in entrepreneurship, the most successful innovations often arrive when market conditions, consumer needs, and supporting technologies align. Timing is the bridge between a good idea and its real-world impact. Personal strategies also benefit from timing. Changing careers, investing, pursuing education, or even cultivating relationships requires awareness of when to act. A strategic thinker asks, is this the right time? What conditions must be in place to maximize success? How will acting now versus waiting affect outcomes? To strengthen your sense of timing, practice observing patterns and noting results. Track when your actions yield the best outcomes, when opportunities arise, and how external factors influence success. Over time, you'll develop a sharper instinct for the rhythm of change and the moments that matter most. Ultimately, timing transforms strategy from theory into leverage. It converts effort into advantage, ideas into action, and vision into results. Master timing, and you gain the ability to act not only correctly, but powerfully, at precisely the moment that makes all the difference.
Chapter 11. Execution with Precision. Bridging the gap between strategy and action. Communicating vision clearly to teams. Tracking progress and making course corrections. Strategy is only as good as its execution. You can have the clearest vision, the strongest resources, and perfect timing, but without precise execution, strategy remains an idea on paper. Strategic thinkers know that execution is where planning meets reality, the bridge between intent and impact. Execution begins with clarity. Everyone involved must understand the goal, the plan, and their role in achieving it. Ambiguity is the enemy of action. When teams know not just what to do, but why it matters, effort becomes aligned, motivation increases, and mistakes decrease. Strategic communicators ensure that every person sees the connection between their actions and the larger vision. Prioritization is equally critical. Resources are limited, and energy can scatter if too many initiatives compete for attention. Great execution focuses on the few tasks that create the greatest impact. Apple's product development process, for instance, limits the number of projects at any one time, ensuring teams devote maximum focus to each. Less critical tasks are deferred, delegated, or eliminated. Strategic thinkers embrace this principle. Success is rarely about doing everything. It's about doing the right things exceptionally well. Another key element is discipline. Execution requires persistence, consistency, and attention to detail. The best strategies can be undermined by sloppy follow-through. Even small errors can compound, causing delays, waste, and missed opportunities. Strategic thinkers build systems, routines, and checkpoints to maintain quality and momentum, ensuring that the plan unfolds as intended. Feedback and measurement are indispensable. No strategy survives unchanged, and execution rarely goes perfectly. Strategic thinkers continuously monitor progress, measure outcomes, and adjust when necessary. This is not micromanagement. It is adaptive control. By analyzing what works, what lags, and what risks emerge, they keep the strategy on course. Execution without feedback is like sailing without a compass. Effort is expended, but direction is uncertain. Communication is another cornerstone of precise execution. Ideas must flow clearly across teams, stakeholders, and partners. Strategic leaders tailor their messages, providing the right level of detail to different audiences. They anticipate questions, remove obstacles, and build alignment. Execution falters when people misunderstand priorities, objectives, or expectations. Consider the story of NASA's Apollo missions. The engineering teams developed brilliant strategies to land humans on the moon, but it was execution with precision, rigorous testing, cross-team coordination, and countless meticulous procedures that made success possible. Without precise execution, even the best strategy would have remained science fiction. Execution also requires courage and decisiveness. Plans rarely survive unchanged. Unexpected challenges will arise. Strategic thinkers respond with clarity and agility, making decisions quickly, reallocating resources, and correcting course. Hesitation in the face of change often costs more than an imperfect action. Finally, execution demands accountability. Strategic thinkers assign responsibility and ownership clearly. Teams must know who decides, who acts, and who measures outcomes. Accountability ensures follow-through and fosters trust that commitments will be honored. To strengthen execution, try this exercise. Map your strategy into concrete, actionable steps. Assign responsibilities, define timelines, and establish measurable milestones. Then review regularly, adjusting as you learn. This practice converts abstract strategy into tangible results. In the end, execution with precision is what transforms vision into reality. Strategy without execution is imagination. Execution without strategy is effort wasted. Together, they create the engine that drives progress, converts opportunity into achievement, and turns ideas into lasting impact.